Oops, still not it. Wow, why do they have an entire room just for shoes? That's mental. I muttered to myself as I closed the door. I swear, that was like the 20th door I'd opened. This place was insane. I had no idea which door would lead to my bedroom. To be honest, I've never been anywhere this lavish before in my entire life. Okay, it's now down to this door or that one over there. Wish me luck. But as I reached for the doorknob, I heard a voice.
Hey, what prank you trying to pull on me again? I caught you red-handed this time, Gabby.
Startled, I turned around, and oh wow, there was this super cute guy standing there, looking so smug with himself. So this must be Jaden, the annoying big brother that Gabby had told me about. Only he didn't seem annoying to me. But right, I needed to stay in character, so I replied, yeah, guess I was just too busy thinking about stuff that I didn't watch where I was going. Take it easy, bro. Then I immediately fled to the other room while Jaden watched me in confusion. Phew! That was a close one. And wow, was Gabby a princess or something? She lived in a literal palace. Look at her room. Oh, you must be wondering. Yes, I'm not Gabby. I'm Nancy. So how come Jaden didn't realize that I was not his sister? Now, let me tell you, that's one wild story. I was just a normal teenager, living my peaceful life in the Missouri countryside. My family doesn't have a lot of money, so I worked part-time in a nearby diner so I could save up for college. Yeah, it wasn't perfect, but I knew I was lucky to have my loving family. They're my everything. So, anyway, it wasn't uncommon for schools from St. Louis to arrange trips out here to show the kids what country life was like. And on days like those, the diner could get pretty hectic, and today was no exception. By the time my shift finished, I was a tired, sweaty mess, so I took the scenic route home to unwind. That's when I heard this girl screaming for help. She must have slipped and fell into this ditch. I quickly found a big branch to help pull her out of there. Then she brushed the dirt off her as she said, "Thanks." But as she looked up at me, OMG! We both jumped up in such a fright that we almost stumbled back into the ditch. She looked exactly like me. I pinched myself to check I wasn't hallucinating or something. I mean, I was super exhausted from work. We stared at each other gormlessly for a bit. Then she suddenly reached out her hand and slapped me. Ouch! I raised my eyebrows at her, and she just grinned back. Oops, sorry. Just checking this isn't a dream. That's when I saw it. Her bracelet. The pendant on it was a strange shape. A strange shape like mine. I held out my wrist to slot my bracelet's pendant into hers, and it formed a butterfly. What's more, carved on the back of it was our birthday, November 3rd. Oh my God! No wonder why! I always asked my parents why they bought me such an ugly bracelet. Turns out it was 2 halves of a whole? She shrieked. So, do you think we're twins? I was still in shock, but I managed to mutter out, "Must be." She excitedly clapped her hands together, then pulled me into a hug. She said her name was Gabby, and her field trip was so dull that she wandered off, then ended up lost and stuck. Then I told her about my loving family, and she told me about her city life. I thought her life sounded awesome, but she didn't think so. Nah, it's seriously so boring over there. I just want a happy, drama-free life like yours. It makes sense now. I see why my parents love my brother more than me. I'm obviously adopted. But hey, at least you have your friends and get to go to a good school. School? That's the worst part. I hate it. Then she paused and turned to me. Nancy, I have an amazing idea. How about we switch places? This was crazy. An hour ago, I thought I was an only child, and now I was staring at my twin. Gabby seemed adamant switching places was the best idea ever, as I'd get a taste of the city life while also helping her ace her upcoming exams. This did sound tempting. I mean, it wasn't every day your long-lost twin appeared and offered you the adventure of a lifetime, right? We didn't have much time to discuss it anymore, so we quickly switched clothes, phones, and further instructions about anything else would be discussed later over the phone. Then I showed her the way to my house, and I headed toward the crowd of noisy students lining up for the bus back to the city. Suddenly, a girl tapped me on the shoulder and in an annoyed tone said, where have you been? Blonde hair, a pink hairband, and wearing a choker with a heart pendant on it. Yep, this must be Katie, Gabby's best friend. I followed her onto the bus, then yawned and told her I was exhausted. I feigned sleeping for the duration of the journey back so she wouldn't start any more convos with me. So after that, things went by smoothly, until I got home and didn't know where I normally sleep at. But it's okay now, as I'm safe in Gabby's bedroom. The butler did knock on the door to ask me to come down for dinner. I know, the fact they have a butler is crazy. But I just lied that I'd eaten loads on the field trip. There was no time for food now. I needed to learn as much as I could about these people. I searched her room and looked through her yearbooks, family photos, anything. I thought I was ready to go to school as Gabby tomorrow. But, well, as if it was that simple. The next morning, I nervously came downstairs to go to school. And of course, I had to face the entire family now. Upon seeing me, the small talks all came flying at me. How was yesterday's trip, dear? I managed to mumble out, it was all right. Then suddenly, a hand rubbed my hair.
Hey, I'm taking your PB&J, okay? You won't eat it anyway.
I turned to look and saw him grinning at me before he headed outside. Oh gosh, I thought I'd melted into a puddle. He's so cute. I just wanted to follow him. But then Dad cleared his throat.
Gabriella, can we please make it a day free of complaints from your teachers?
Oh God, Gabby, what had you possibly done? I gulped back, nodded in response, then hurried out of there. I awkwardly lingered in front of the mansion. This was the spot where the bus dropped me off yesterday, so hope this was how it worked. Then suddenly, a scary-looking guy pulled up on the other side of the street and yelled at me.
Babe, what are you doing? Get in!
Me? I was his babe? Oh, so he was Dylan, my sister's boyfriend. I walked over and reluctantly climbed on the back seat.
Hey, what's wrong? Are you still mad at me for letting you go on the field trip alone? Come on, you said it was okay.
I didn't know what to say to him, so I stayed quiet and stared out the window.
Come on, babe. I mean, this is dumb. We both know how sitting in the back always gives you travel sickness.
Gosh, I really needed to say something to shut this guy up, huh? No, it's totally fine between us. It's just that I feel a bit under the weather. I need a little rest, that's all. And it's more spacey here. Well, that seemed to quiet him down, but I kept on catching him giving me odd looks in the rearview mirror. Look at him! Ugh! Gabby and I might be twins, but our taste in guys couldn't be any more different. Dylan looked like the bad boy type. Green hair, a nose ring, and drove some flashy sports car, while I prefer sweet and funny guys, like Jaden. But I didn't want to accidentally ruin my sister's relationship either, so when we got to school, I had to give him a peck on the cheek to make sure that we were cool. Yuck. His cologne stank. Luckily, I met Katie in the parking lot, so I followed her to class. Things were going great. At least, they were, until we got to Spanish class. The teacher, Mrs. Harrison, gave me this judgy look right from the moment I walked in. Turns out, Gabby hadn't handed in her homework, and she spent the whole of the last session painting her nails. Mrs. Harrison demanded to check my homework today. Well, of course, I didn't know I had homework. So, in a disappointed voice, she said, "Gabby, it's been 2 years and you still don't know how to conjugate any single verb. Are you proud of that?" Suddenly, I heard Katie whisper, "But at least she knows how to dress, Mrs. Harrison." Your sweater looks like it should have been thrown out 2 years ago. Then some of the class giggled. Oh my God, Katie? That was so rude. But luckily, the teacher didn't hear that. I quickly apologized to Mrs. Harrison and told her to just give me a pop quiz to make up for my missing homework. She did. And to her, and the whole class's total surprise, I slayed all the questions. After class, I told Katie that her comment about Mrs. Harrison wasn't cool. Laughing, she replied, "Geez, why are you so uptight today?" But on seeing my unfaltering expression, she quickly changed the subject. "You've still got to help me with the plan, okay? You promised." She winked at me. "What? What plan?" In confusion, I faked a smile at Katie. "Oh, don't you worry, girl. I got it all set." That night, Gabby called me and we updated each other on our first day. Things went better than expected. Apparently, she loved it there, and she felt so warm and connected with Mom and Dad, and she was sure that they were our real parents. She also enjoyed feeding the chickens and apple picking in the backyard. However, she did almost get me fired from work, as she didn't know how to use the oven, but she managed to charm her way out of it. I told her how I'd handled the Dylan situation and made peace with Mrs. Harrison. But oh, Gabby, Katie did mention to me about some plan? What is it? Oh, yeah, I promised to set her up with Jaden. I guess you'll have to carry it out for me now. My heart sank as I said, Jaden? As in, your brother Jaden? Yeah, now not biologically. It's no wonder I just couldn't get along with him. Not like us, right? I forced a laugh and changed the subject. But, oh no, Jaden was far more suited to me than rebellious Katie. But, okay, this was Gabby's life, so I needed to make sure I didn't mess it up. And maybe, when this twinning truth broke out, I'd get my chance with Jaden. For now, we agreed to continue living each other's lives. I suppose it was pretty easy, seeing as all Gabby seemed to do was hang out with her friends and avoid doing her homework. The only part I didn't like was setting Katie up with Jaden. And that's when things got complicated. Will we ever tell everyone the truth? Or this life swap is too much fun to stop? Stay tuned for part 2 to find out. Hey, it's me again, Nancy. Only I'm currently pretending to be my long-lost identical twin, Gabby. After a chance meeting with her, she was now living my life in the countryside, and I was living hers in the city. One snag, I was crushing on her adoptive brother Jaden. But Gabby's best friend Katie also wanted me to set her up with him. What a bummer, huh? Katie insisted that I convince Jaden to tutor her on Saturday, the excuse being she had some super important physics exam. So, with my most enthusiastic voice, I went to ask him to help her. And surprisingly, Jaden found it a great idea.
You should sit in too. Dad will be so stoked if you manage to get something above an F next time.
Oh wow, Jaden is just the sweetest. I don't get why Gabby complains about him. So, as planned, at 3 p.m. sharp, Katie appears at our door, wearing this flashy, off-the-shoulder dress that would have best suited a nightclub or something. Upon seeing her, Jaden chuckled and said,
"Oh, what's the occasion?"
Katie blushed and smiled back. But before she could speak up, I chimed in. Katie's afraid your physics class would be too boring, so she wanted to add some colors. Jaden laughed and told us to follow him upstairs to study. Katie obviously wasn't happy with my ad-lib. She frowned at me and mouthed, "What the heck was that?" And I just gave her 2 big thumbs up and acted as if I was being an amazing wing girl. We sat around a desk and Jaden started to explain physics stuff. This was so easy, but Katie kept leaning in closer to him and asked him some dumb questions while playing with her hair. I swear, the hair twirling was an act, but her not understanding any of these symbols was real. I soon got tired of playing dumb, so I jumped in and explained it instead, and Jaden looked impressed. Okay, this was fun. Katie shot me a dirty look. "Gabby, don't you have a manicure at 5? Then she kicked my leg under the desk.
"Stay, you're acing it."
Jaden grinned at me.
"Those nails can wait. You're only one F away from Dad's tantrum, and I don't want to witness that. Then he turned to Katie. You should encourage each other to do better. Then we went back to the lesson. I could tell how furious Katie was, as she was crumpling up the edges of a page on her notepad. I was secretly celebrating my little win. Then my phone rang. It was Dylan, and he sounded kinda mad. Oh my God. I'd totally forgotten that Gabby had told me about today's big date at a fancy restaurant for their 6th-month anniversary. Oops. I didn't want to go on a date with Dylan and leave Jaden here with Katie. Ugh! But I couldn't let Gabby down, so I quickly changed outfits, grabbed the gift she'd bought for him, then left. I arrived at the restaurant to see him lingering about outside, looking sulky. So I had to make up some excuse. Sorry, honey, I just wanted to look good for you. Then gave him a kiss on the cheek. Yuck. He was wearing even more cologne this time. Inside, I feigned interest in the menu so I wouldn't have to talk to him. I didn't want to mess my sister's relationship up, but I had nothing in common with this guy. Suddenly, his phone rang out. Hang on, was that a Youngblood song? Sorry, babe. I forgot to put it back on silent. I love Youngblood. His new song is so catchy. We should make a TikTok to it. He gave me an odd look. But you always hate this kind of music. Thinking quick, I replied, I guess your music tastes must be rubbing off on me. He looked extra happy, then took my hand, which startled me a little, but that was a good icebreaker. I felt much more comfortable talking to him after that. Okay, so regardless of his clothes and hair, he was actually a pretty sweet guy, and it was obvious that he really cares for Gabby. We had a lot of fun, and then he dropped me off at home. And obviously, like any couple that had been dating for months, he went in for a kiss. And I started to panic again. For your information, I haven't had my first kiss yet. And I didn't want it to be with my sister's boyfriend. I gave him a kiss on the cheek again, then fake coughing. I told him the cold the other day hadn't worn off yet, and I didn't want to pass it to him. Phew. Luckily, he bought it. Then he just gave me a kiss on the forehead and wished me good night. Whew! It was such a day. I threw myself onto the bed and was about to call Gabby for an update when Katie called. She moaned at me for being unhelpful on her date. Then she demanded I rearrange another one to make it up to her. So, another tutor session with math? I suggested, with zero effort whatsoever. No thanks, I'm tired of it. Gabby, you literally did no help today. This is the chance to redeem yourself. I trust you. Then she hung up, leaving me at a dead end. So I phoned Gabby for advice, and she told me to book them at a date at Jaden's favorite restaurant or something. Then, Gabby must have noticed how unenthusiastic I sounded. She added, Oh, and Nancy, I know Katie loves to do the whole mean girl act, but underneath it all, she's actually pretty sensitive and has always been a good friend to me. So please make this work for her. Okay, so I needed to be less Nancy and more Gabby, as Katie deserved to have a loyal, caring best friend. So I made a reservation, sent Katie the time and place, then told Jaden about it. And now I just sit back and let them meet up and flirt and... I mean, there's nothing I could do. It's not like I was going to stalk them or anything. But yeah, that's exactly what I ended up doing. I didn't mean to, but the thought of them being together just driving me nuts. So there I was, strategically placing myself behind a pillar in the restaurant, trying to stalk them. Then all of a sudden, someone threw an apron at me. What are you doing? The place is packed and you decide to just stand here flirting with the pillar, or what? Get to work! I turned to see the waiter who had just talked to me rush off to take another order. Wait a minute, did he just think I was a waitress because my shirt looked similar to their uniform? If so, then let the fun begin. I quickly put on the apron, lowered my hat, and hovered around the kitchen window, trying to find Jaden and Katie's order. There it was. Now, let's add extra spice on Katie's ravioli. It didn't take long for their food to come out, and Katie started coughing like crazy, having a taste of her food. Ha! But joke on me. That only gave her a platform to act up and make Jaden take better care of her. He even held a forkful of his steak out to her, and I watched her lean in and eat it. Ugh! Later on, when the waiter walked away with their dessert order, I waited for a sec before running after him and said, "Hey, Table 17 just asked to change the chocolate cake to peanut butter cheesecake. They just told me." Then he just fixed the order without a doubt. Katie seemed to hate peanut butter so much. She made sure to let everybody know that every time we went to eat something. Well, Jaden loved PB&J, so by this way, he would see what an annoying, picky eater she was. After that, I lingered at a corner, pretending to wipe tables to stay out of sight, while keeping an eye on them. And as expected, Katie jumped off her seat and started yelling at the waiter after taking a sniff of the cake. The waiter looked puzzled, then looked around, searching for something. Suddenly, he pointed at me. "Hey, are you sure about the order? You were the one who told me that they switched the cakes." I froze as all the eyes were now on me. "Gabby, I can't believe this! Why are you ruining this for me?" Katie charged towards me. You know how bad my peanut allergy is. I could have ended up in the hospital. I don't know you anymore, Gabby." Then she stormed off. Oh my God, I really didn't know that. I didn't mean to hurt Katie that way. Jaden then quickly paid the bill, then grunted at me. "We're going home." He didn't say a single word to me on the way home. He just went straight to his room and slammed the door. I stood outside of his room and kept on apologizing. He finally opened it and yelled at me. "What's up with you? You've reached new levels of weird lately?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "I thought you'd finally changed for the better. But, well, turns out you're still the same spoiled brat you always were. Just do whatever you want without a second thought." "No, it's not like that. It was an accident. Oh, really? Then what is it like?" "It's like I have a crush on you, Jaden. I just can't bear seeing you with other girls." "What? Are you crazy? This better not be some kind of prank, Gabby. You're my sister." "No, I'm not. I'm not Gabby. I'm her twin, Nancy. And FYI, both Gabby and I aren't your biological sister either." Jaden looked at me, jaw dropped. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Gabby, what did you just say?" It was Mum. She looked so perplexed, and tears were already welling up. We had an emergency family meeting, where I told them all about my chance meeting with Gabby, switching places, and how she believed she was adopted, as they favored Jaden over her. So now she's with our biological parents in the countryside. To say they looked shocked was an understatement. Then Mum took my hand and said, "Sweetie, it's time you learned the truth." Then she told me how 12 years ago, during a family picnic, I wandered off and got lost. They tried searching for me, but to no result. But now, here I was. I'd found my way back to them. They also mentioned that it wasn't that they loved Jaden more. They were stricter with Gabby because she was rebellious when it came to her studies. "It pains me to know she thinks we love her less." Dad sighed. Then Mum turned to me, cupped my face with her hands. "Oh God, my poor Abby. I can't believe you're here with us now." Abby? So my real name was Abigail? I choked up. Things then got emotional. There was a lot of hugging and sobbing. It was an emo overload. "So let's go pick up your sister, shall we?" Dad patted on my shoulder and told everyone to get changed. Then we hit the road right away. It may have already been 10 p.m., but this couldn't wait. On the ride, I started to calm down and let the truth get to me as I took one good look at everyone. So these were my real parents? And that meant Jaden was my real brother too? Man, now that's embarrassing. I pulled out my phone to give Gabby a heads up that we were coming and didn't forget to add a, "You are so not going to believe what actually happened." I was expecting her to call me right back, but instead, she just replied with, "I bet you I will believe it." Huh? We arrived at my house, and my parents rushed out to me and hugged me tightly. It turns out they figured out that Gabby was an imposter pretty quickly, but she's still enjoying this farming life so much that she decided to hang around a bit more before telling me. Sorry, Nancy, but it didn't take long for Mom and Dad to notice how her daughter suddenly doesn't know how to fry an egg anymore. Then everybody laughed. We all squeezed around the kitchen table and caught up on everything. Oh boy, it got emotional again. I think we all cried enough tears to fill a lake. It was so good to see my parents again. Even though they weren't my biological parents, they loved and cared for me, despite all the money struggles. Now that we're reunited, I've officially moved back in the city with Gabby, and we now go to school together. We still come out to the countryside every weekend and spend some quality time with my adoptive parents, who, turns out, Gabby loves just as much as I do. And thanks to my biological parents, they now have the bountiful ranch they always dreamed of. It all fell into place in the end, and I couldn't be happier. Except for the little awkward moments with Jaden. Thinking back about that, it was so dumb. Maybe I'll help Katie properly this time, as, to be honest, they'd make a pretty cute couple. But she better set me up with another cute guy in return. I was standing outside of college chatting to my friends when suddenly a police car pulled up, and from the car's window, a handsome police officer waved at me, then told me to hurry up. I excitedly waved back at him, said goodbye to my friends, and rushed to him in front of their admiring eyes. So, I'm Daisy, and the handsome cop is Levi, my amazing, brave boyfriend. We first met at the library in town. I was there for my studies, and he was looking for some crime books. We started dating, and now a year later, we're madly in love. There are so many things that I love about dating a cop, such as seeing him in his uniform. It never fails to make me beam with pride. And I'm not gonna lie, he has abs of steel due to all of his workouts. Swoon! Besides, he has the cutest quirky habits. Like, when we go to a restaurant or the theater, he always scans it first to check if it's safe. But as good as being with him is, there are a few bum points, such as his unpredictable work schedule. Day, night, weekends, you name it, he works it. Then, when we finally managed to plan something, he sometimes got an emergency phone call and had to bail on me. This sucked, especially when it was my sister's wedding. But without a doubt, the most annoying thing of all is his popularity with other girls. They're like moths to a flame around him, especially this one colleague of his, Ellie. One time, Levi brought his colleague Brad over while I was there studying. I heard Brad remark, "Levi, I never thought you'd end up with a bookworm. I thought you'd end up with Ellie. Everyone can see you two have a strong connection." Levi tried laughing it off and saying that it was nonsense. But the jealousy rose up in me. By the time Brad left, I was really upset about it. So I packed up my books and went to leave. He stopped me and asked me what was wrong. Trying my best not to cry, I blurted out, "Why aren't you with Ellie? You spend all your time with her." He shook his head, smirked, then said, "Ignore Brad. He's a joker. And yeah, I spend time with Ellie. I work with her. But it's you I love, and everyone knows it. In fact, why don't you move in? Then we can spend more time together." My sadness was soon overlapped by happiness, and I jumped into his arms and squealed out, "Really? Yes, for sure!" This was so exciting. I moved in a few weeks later, and at first, living with Levi was the best thing ever. But over time, there were little niggling things that started to play on my mind. For example, one day I was chatting to the new neighbor when Levi arrived home and in a stone-cold voice demanded I go inside. Then he sternly told me never to talk to strangers. But come on, I'm a naturally chatty, friendly girl who loves talking to people and making new friends. I don't know, I guess it was me overreacting? I mean, he was just looking out for me, right? But then his need for control worsened when once I arranged to meet my friends in town. Levi was going to come too, but then he had a last-minute work call and couldn't. When I said I'd just get a taxi, he freaked out and told me I couldn't go. After I got upset about it, he reluctantly agreed to let me go. He called a reputable taxi firm to pick me up, then told me I had to be back by 10 p.m. But after a few drinks, I lost all sense of time. I was just having too much fun. I was dancing with my friend when Levi stormed in, grabbed my arm, and pulled me out of there. Everyone was staring at us, not helped because he was in his cop uniform. I even heard one man tut out, "It's always the innocent-looking ones, isn't it?" It was so embarrassing. At home, I sat there brooding while he got me a glass of water. When he tried passing it to me, I jumped up to my feet and screamed at him, "You're being ridiculous, and thanks to you, everyone in the bar thinks I'm some sort of criminal. I don't need a curfew." "It's not like that," he sighed. But I was so upset, I brushed past him and slammed the bedroom door behind me. I cried myself to sleep. I hated arguing with him. I gave him silent treatment throughout the next day. But then in the evening, he arrived home with a gift box and apologized for making me sad. That was so sweet. I gave him a hug and said, "I'm sorry too." Then I opened the box. It was a really lovely watch. I noticed that it had an extra button on it, but I didn't think much of it. I stared down at it admirably as he fixed it on my wrist. That's how caring my boyfriend was. So I decided to buy him something too. The next day after college, I went to the mall. Suddenly, Levi called me and asked me where I was. I wanted the gift to be a surprise, so I told him I was at home. Crossly, he said, "Daisy, don't lie to me. I know you're at High Hill Shopping Mall. Come home at once." Huh? How did he know that? I gave up on finding a gift and went home. When he got back, I asked him how he knew where I was, and I saw him briefly glance at my watch. Then, he admitted that he had GPS fitted to it, but it was only so he could keep me safe. What? I wasn't a kid anymore. How could he use it to follow me? We had a huge fight, and I told him he was controlling and crazy, and he needed to stop treating me like a little kid. Then I shut myself away in the bedroom. The next day, when I woke up, Levi had already left for work. I was so wound up, so I decided to go for a jog to clear my head. Obviously, I left the watch at home, and also my phone. When I got back, I was about to head for the shower when I heard my phone ringing. It was Levi. Then I noticed that I had 50 missed calls and a ton of messages from him. What? This wasn't normal. I'd only been gone for an hour at the most. Anyways, I put the watch back on, then suddenly the door banged open and Levi stormed in, and he yelled at me, "Are you okay? Where did you go? Why didn't you answer my calls?" This sucked, as I love him, but I knew I couldn't live like this anymore. So I told him I needed my freedom, then headed for the door. He looked so mad as he grabbed my hand, pulled me into the upstairs room, then locked me inside. I banged on the door and pleaded with him to let me out. "Daisy, trust me. This is for your own good. You're not safe out there." Then I heard his footsteps trail off and knew he'd left. I curled up into a ball and cried myself to sleep. It was March 31st. A normal day, right? Well, yeah, but not tomorrow. Nope, as it was April Fool's Day. A prankster like me waits all year for that one day when I can play jokes on people without them getting in a mood with me. I've been planning my tricks for months, and boy oh boy, it's going to be so much fun. I turned to my best friend Aya and said with a devious smile, "Just you wait until tomorrow. My prank ideas are going to be legendary." I thought Aya would want to know more, but nope. She just blew her fringe out of her face, then sighed out, "Fleur, why don't you just give it a rest this year? Reality check. No one finds your pranks funny. Only uncomfortable and annoying." What? No way! That's not true. People love my pranks. Aya continued, "Do you remember your pencil prank on Luna last year?" I nodded and let out a snort. How could I forget that prank, as it had been so funny? I'd cut Luna's pencil in half, filled her pencil grip with ink, then assembled it back together just like new. And voila! Cue an ink explosion during an otherwise boring test. Luna cried a lot because she failed her biology test and had to retake it. I shrugged. So this was technically true, but it was still funny. And the time you swapped the cheerleading team's chant music for heavy metal and made a fool out of them at the basketball match? She frowned at me. Jeez, stop being a fun killer. I'm making everyone's high school experience memorable. As, let's face it, no one will remember boring tests and tedious basketball matches otherwise. I was too busy talking to notice the ball whizzing through the air until it whacked me right on the head. Ouch! The world went black and I collapsed. I opened my eyes to see Aya and some other kids gawping down at me. Then my teacher rushed over and shooed them off. Fleur, are you okay? Her and Aya helped me sit up, and while I rubbed my head, I replied, Yeah, I'm fine, but I do feel a little dizzy. The teacher thought it would be best if I went home early, so she told Aya to take me back. I was so tired, but I knew sleeping when I might have a concussion was a bad idea, so I chilled out and watched a movie in my room until Mom came home from work. Okay, so my head hurt, and the room was still spinning, but there was no way I was going to let this small accident ruin my big day. I had planning to do, so I grabbed my notebook and checked through my prank ideas and prop list. The next morning, I woke up bright and early, and yay! The spinning had stopped. Whoa, today was the day. Let the pranking commence. I'd told Aya to meet me earlier, so I had time to set up my pranks. But to my annoyance, she showed up at the usual time. I hurried over to her and tapped my watch. What time do you call this? Now I'm going to be behind schedule. She gave me a puzzled look. For what? It's not April 1st anymore. Today is the 2nd. You had yesterday off because of your head bump, remember? What? What are you talking about? Look, it says today is April 1st. I waved my phone in her face. Then your calendar is wrong. Check your settings or something. Now, let's go. She walked off. No way. Don't think you can fool me, I said while trying to run after her. As soon as I arrived at school, I joined my friends in the canteen for breakfast, and Kelly looked at me and said, How's the head? I told her it was fine and passed her an Oreo. You know what? She ate it with no hesitation, but after one bite, she spat it into her hand. Ew, what is that? Yuck! I laughed at her and said, Ha! That's toothpaste sandwiched between Oreo biscuits. Okay, I'm sorry. Drink this. Then I passed her a bottle of cola. She took a big gulp, then immediately spit it out. Hey, this is so gross. Then she ran to the bathroom to clean her mouth. Yep, I put soy sauce in that bottle. I followed her to the bathroom to check on her and found her rinsing her mouth out under the tap. When she finished, she frowned at me and said, Fleur, this isn't funny. I thought you only did these stupid pranks on April 1st. Now I have to put up with my stinky soy sauce breath all day. I rolled my eyes, then smirked. Yeah, as if it's not April 1st today. It's not. What's wrong with you? It's the 2nd. Then she stormed off. Wait, what? What did she mean it was the 2nd? No way. Anyways, seeing as I was already in there, I decided I may as well carry out another prank. I pulled out my Nutella jar and went into one of the cubicles and waited until another girl went into the one next door. I asked her, Hey, excuse me, my friend, do you have toilet paper in there? She was nice and replied, Sure. Then she passed it to me. I quickly put some Nutella on my hand, then rubbed it over her hand too. Oops! Oh boy, she screamed so loudly, and I couldn't hold my laugh. Ew, what the hell? So disgusting, you freak! Then she ran out to wash her hand. I stepped out. Relax, girl. It was just a prank for Fool's Day. Just Nutella. But she sneered back. You're crazy, and it's the 2nd already. Jeez, what's wrong with you? Then she left. Okay, this was so weird. Why was everyone acting like it was April 2nd? On the way to class, I rechecked my phone. Yep, it said April 1st. Okay, I got it. This was everyone's dumb attempt to fool me. Well, nice try, but it so wasn't working. As it was the 1st, which meant it was time for math class. I took my seat in class and waited, but, why did Mr. Simmons, the chemistry teacher, walk in? He told us to prepare for our next lesson in the lab. What was going on? I was so confused. That was tomorrow's schedule, right? Then he sat down in the chair without any suspicion and a big fart sound came. I laughed so much my sides hurt. I couldn't believe it. I do this every year, but they fall for it each time. But hang on, why was everyone so quiet? I looked around and realized I was the only one laughing. Oh, come on, everybody. It was fun. The typical joke for April Fools. Mr. Simons held up the fart pillow and gave me a stern look. Fleur, I don't expect this behavior from someone your age, especially seeing as it's not even April Fool's Day anymore. And can you believe it? All my classmates agreed with him. No way! Everyone was crazy. No, it is. I know it is. You're all lying, I replied in a panic before I gathered up my stuff and ran out of the classroom. I really needed some space to think this through. It was all so crazy. I couldn't have zoned out for an entire day. Could I? Or the ball hit me so hard that I lost my memory? I remember having dinner, then staying up late to plan out my pranks, and I know I was tired, but no way. They were the crazy ones, not me. Anyway, lab time. I was the last one to walk in, and I sat down at my bench and started on the experiment. I guess I wasn't focusing properly as I poured the chemical into the beaker, and boom! The next thing I knew, I was covered in this weird green powder stuff. Still, no one was laughing. Instead, they were all staring at me and asking if I was okay. Then Mr. Simons asked them all, "Why is this chemical bottle here? What a mistake!" Embarrassed, I ran to the bathroom to clean my face. Geez, I looked like the Grinch. It was super tricky to scrub off. Ugh, I hoped I wouldn't be stuck with this color forever. But was it someone's prank on me? But if that's the case, then why did no one laugh? I sure would have laughed at me if I was them. Finally, the green powder started to come off, and then I went back to class. On top of my backpack was a folded-up note with my name on it. I opened it. Hi, Fleur. There's something important I want to tell you. Meet me in the hall after class. Devin, X. My heart instantly fluttered. I'd had a crush on Devin for, forever. But, oh, I got this. This had to be a prank. Everybody knew I liked him, so they did all of this to embarrass me. Devin must be involved this time. I glanced over at him, and he smiled, then gave me this cute wave. Whatever, this was definitely too good to be true. Enough. I wasn't going to let everyone laugh at me anymore. So, as I followed Devin to the hall, I took a sip of water, but I kept it in my mouth. Then, when Devin stopped walking and turned to face me, I squirted the water up into the air like an elephant, then said, "Ha! Gotcha! I'm no fool." He wiped his face onto the back of his sleeve, then looked me straight in the eye and said, "Fleur, I have feelings for you. I waited until today to tell you, as I didn't want to do it yesterday on April Fool's Day, as you'd probably think it was a joke. So why do that to me?" I stared at him speechless. The highlighted words that I'd heard were feelings, yesterday, and April Fool's Day. I started laughing a fake laugh, but then it turned awkward, 'cause his serious expression didn't budge. "You're kidding, right?" I muttered out, but he looked totally devastated. Oh no, I didn't want to upset Devin. I was just confused with days and, as if I actually missed April Fool's Day. What a bummer! I realized my prank had gone too far, and how it could have hurt his feelings, so I blurted out, "Devin, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. It's the concussion. I I'm delirious. I'm so sorry. Then came an awkward silence. Suddenly, Devin's sad look changed into a smirk, and he began to laugh. Then everyone jumped out of nowhere and started laughing too. I stood there with a gormless expression on my face. Then Aya appeared and said, "Gotcha!" So it turns out it was actually April the 1st, and I hadn't actually missed a day. Nope, this was Aya's ingenious idea for everyone to get their own back on me. Last night, she created a group on Facebook and added everyone in the class, including the teachers, to plan today's prank. No, this couldn't be possible. I was the pranking queen, not them. Then Aya sidled up to me and said, "Hey Fleur, guess what? It's still April Fool's Day." The next thing I knew, I was grinning at her. Then I play hit her arm and started to laugh. I guess that they had fooled me good. After that, I didn't carry out any more pranks. I was just happy to have a chilled rest of the day. Then, when I was walking home, Devin caught up with me and said, "Fleur, I'm sorry. But actually, not everything was a joke today." I smiled and looked at him. "Oh yeah? So, what's not a joke?" But he just turned tomato red, then rushed away. I stood there blushing as I watched him hurry off. Did this mean Devin really likes me? Interesting. Maybe this April Fool's Day wasn't such a fail after all.
I was swaying to the music with the hottest girl at school in my arms. Everything was perfect when suddenly I saw a flurry of red storming toward me, and then the next thing I knew, I was being slapped across the face. Ugh, it was my ex, Rosie. She was looking at me as if she wanted to snap me in half. Okay, so Rosie and me had only broken up yesterday, but that didn't mean she had the right to go full psycho on me. Hey, so I'm Andrew, and I like to think I'm a pretty smart guy. The problem is, I'm a sucker for hot girls. I tend to be blinded by their beauty. The result being, I don't always make the best decisions around them. But I had no idea what drama my weakness for a pretty girl was about to get me into. So it all began with the end-of-term college party. Me and my friends went heavy on the drinks. So when my friend Brad bet me a burger that I wouldn't go and ask Lisa to dance, well, I didn't hesitate in approaching her. Geez, she's so hot and way out of my league. So I was expecting her to tell me to go away, but instead she smiled and let me lead her over to the dance floor. While we were dancing, she whispered in my ear that she'd always liked me. Then, yep, you guessed it, Rosie, my crazy ex, stormed over and slapped me. I woke up the next morning with a pounding headache. Ugh, what was all that shouting coming from outside my open window? I wrapped my bed cover around me and shuffled my way over there to take a look. Lisa and Rosie were yelling at each other. "He's mine, not yours. Stay away." "He wants me, not you. Deal with it." "Oh yeah? Well, maybe we should ask Andrew who he prefers." "What's the point? As we both know he'll pick me." I was far too hungover for this, so I closed the window and went back to bed. These girls, they wouldn't stop. For the next few days, they bombarded me with messages and waited for me outside my house. Okay, so most guys dream of two hot girls fighting over them, but trust me, watching them pull each other's hair extensions out isn't as glamorous as it sounds. Thankfully, my prayers were answered by none other than Richie, my awesome brother. He showed up with a ticket for a luxury 2-week cruise trip. He'd booked it ages ago, but then a work thing came up, so the ticket was all mine. Hell yeah! I hugged my brother, grabbed the ticket out of his hand, and started packing. The tricky part was sneaking past Rosie and Lisa, who were still lingering about outside. So I borrowed my housemate's hoodie and baseball cap and pretended to be him to get past them. Result, they didn't even double look at me. Goodbye to my Lisa and Rosie nightmare and hello to the vacation of my dreams. Ah, this is the life. Trust my brother to book such a lavish place. My room was huge and it had my very own balcony. There was so much to do here, from the outdoor bar, dozens of restaurants, swimming pool, cinema. I was on my own floating complex. Heaven. The next morning when I woke up in my king-size bed, I took in the sounds of silence. Yup, oh sweet silence, how I've missed you. This was a no-girl arguing zone. I got changed and walked over to the outdoor bar. It definitely wasn't too early for a cocktail. I had a pair of shades on, and that's when I spotted her. Whoa, she was beautiful. I quickly ordered 2 cocktails and began walking toward her. I was about to hand her the drink when I tripped over a sun lounger, and in slow motion I watched the cup fall. I desperately tried to grab it, but nope. Instead, I managed to knock into her back. She let out a yelp and then yelled out, "You pervert! What do you think you're playing at?" I stood there open-mouthed, contemplating if I should dive into the pool to escape this drama or not. Then I looked down at my sunglasses, which in all the action had fallen off. Suddenly, an idea came to me. So I bent down, stretched out my arms, and pretended to fumble around for them. She looked at me for a while, then picked my sunglasses up, placed them in my hand, then said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Here, let me help you." Then she took my arm and guided me across the pool area. I thanked her. And then, with my trusty shades on, I watched her walk away. So she thought I was blind. Yep, this wasn't my greatest idea, but it got me out of a sticky situation with a hot girl at least. Later that night, I went to the buffet restaurant for dinner. I was stacking my plate when I bumped straight into someone and almost dropped my plate. Ugh, it was that hot girl again. I quickly put my shades on, then deliberately turned the wrong way and loudly said, "Oh, I'm sorry." She put her hand on my shoulder and guided me so I was facing her, then said, "Yeah, it's me, the girl from the pool. And it's okay, I should have been looking where I was going. Do you need any help?" I quickly cut her off. "No thanks, it's okay." Then I lifted my plate up to my nose and sniffed it. These prawns sure smell good. She raised an eyebrow at my food-smelling talent, so I carried on pretending to sniff the food as I put it on my plate. And you know what? She wouldn't quit staring at me. Eventually, she walked off. Phew, what a narrow escape. Afterward, I went to the top deck bar to chill out, with yet another cocktail. Then who should walk over but, yup, you guessed it, the hot girl. I immediately looked away from her, but what's this? She walked over to me and sat down opposite me. "Hey, do you remember me?" she asked. Seeing my chance to flirt with her, I replied, "Oh yes, how could I forget someone as beautiful as you are?" "Huh? How do you know that I'm beautiful?" Damn it, I needed to think before I spoke. "Ah, well, it's your voice. A sweet voice like yours can only belong to a beautiful girl." Crisis averted. As after that we started chatting, and oh boy, she's a sweetheart. Do you know that she's an activist for an organization that works hard to guarantee the rights of baby girls born in Africa? I know, amazing. The evening came to an end and she said, "Oh, my name's Bella, by the way." I replied, "Bella, a name as beautiful as your soul. Mine's Andrew." She gave me a nervous giggle. "Well, Andrew, it's getting late, so I suppose I better get back to my cabin." I didn't want the night to ever end, so I blurted out, "Whoa, Bella, look at the sky. Isn't it so stunning?" She glared at me and then replied, "How would you know that?" Oops, of course, I was meant to be blind. I can feel it from the breeze." She gave me a quizzing look, then said, "Right, well, good night. How about we meet at the arcade tomorrow, let's say 10 a.m.? I excitedly agreed, then she left. Another close escape. I really needed to be more careful. Bella, Bella, Bella. I couldn't stop thinking of her. The next day, I'm such a kid when it comes to arcades, I can't help it. My inner child comes out and, ooh, a car racing game. Nope, I was pretending to be blind. So I awkwardly lingered in the foyer and waited for Bella to show up. When she did, she took my arm and guided me through the arcade. She described all the different games machines to me, which I thought was really sweet. Then she led me over to the plushie grabber machine and squealed excitedly. Hoo-hoo, I loved these as a kid. Soon I was fumbling about to slot my money in, adamant I was going to win her a plushie. But wait, I was meant to be blind. So I touched the controls, then closed my eyes. Her laughter said it all. Massive fail. It was all going to be okay until Bella had to use the restroom and instructed me to stay put and wait for her by a shooting game machine, which just so happened to be my all-time favorite arcade game. I rushed over to it as soon as she was out of sight, grabbed a gun, and shot 5 cannons in a row. Then I jumped up and down and whooped in the air. I turned around and saw Bella frowning at me. Oh boy, busted. I tried to explain, but she just shook her head and said, "How could you? You're a coward, a pervert, and a liar." Then she ran off. I felt terrible. I tried searching the ship for her, but I couldn't find her anywhere. Feeling bummed out, I ordered a cocktail, then went for a walk across the deck. Suddenly, I heard shouting coming from below me. Huh? What was that? I peered down and saw a man and a woman trying to drag a little girl into one of the safety rafts. Hang on, they weren't alone. Bella was there too. She was trying to pull the little girl away from them. Without even thinking, I dropped my drink and ran over to them. I charged towards the woman and knocked her so hard she almost fell into the sea. The man reached out to steady her, which gave Bella a chance to pick up the kid. Then she grabbed my arm and pulled me away. After that, the bad guys jumped into the raft and sailed away. We returned the girl to her parents. It turns out Bella was on her way to her cabin when she saw a couple in tears as they couldn't find their daughter. So she went looking for her and walked in on the kidnapping. After that, Bella forgave me. Well, I did save the day and all. And we spent the rest of the trip together. Then on our last day, I got down on one knee and asked her to be my girlfriend. And she said yes. I took her back home with me, and as we walked over to my house, Lisa and Rosie ran towards me and started arguing with each other about who I liked more. Oh shoot, I'd forgotten about them. Reading the situation, Bella approached them. Thank God you're here. I assume one of you is his girlfriend, right? There was an accident, and Andrew's blind now, and he really needs someone by his side 24/7. Hearing that, I quickly coordinated with her by waving my arms wildly about. So, which one is your girlfriend, Andy? It's Lisa. Rosie quickly chimed in. No, he's all yours. We only hung out once. Ha, what suckers. I watched them run away. Then Bella and I burst out laughing. After that, I held my arm out to her and let her guide me home, for old time's sake. Lying to her about being blind was a jerky thing to do, but I only did it in the first place because being around beautiful girls makes me so nervous I do dumb stuff. It's just lucky that Bella forgave me, because I think this dumbass may have found his dream girl.
Hey kid, why are you here alone? What's your name? I first noticed this little girl when I discovered this epic pastry shop near my school. She'd always be sitting in the alleyway nearby, wearing the same clothes over and over again, clutching a teddy bear in her arms. She looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes and answered timidly, I'm Alex. Then she started crying quietly and said, My mom and dad are always working, so I wait for them here. Sometimes they're gone for days. Oh, this poor little girl. She must have been starving, as she kept eyeing my bag of croissants. I gave her one, and she said chocolate croissants were her favorite. Wow, just like me. No wonder I'd felt drawn to this little girl. She ate it so fast, and I told her I'd go buy her another one, and I'd be right back. I couldn't bear to see her so hungry. How could her parents just leave her like that? I ran as fast as I could, but when I got back to the alleyway, she was gone. How weird. I couldn't see her anywhere. I walked home, and that night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Had her parents come to pick her up? The next day, I went back to the pastry shop, and before I even got there, I heard some kids shouting. I tried to take a closer look, and there Alex was, huddled on the ground while the kids threw her teddy bear around. Oh no, she was crying. This made me so angry, so I charged towards them. Hey, leave her alone right now, or you'll have me to deal with. The bullies immediately ran off. I rushed over and put my arm around Alex. She wiped tears from her eyes and said, Thank you. Other than my teddy, you're the only one who wants to be my friend. I swear the lump in my throat couldn't get any bigger. Then I asked her what happened. She told me how she skipped school because she was bullied for wearing old, smelly clothes. Even the teachers were mean to her, she said. Oh gosh, my heart. I couldn't bear this, so I held out my hand. Alex, I can't leave you out here like this. I've always wanted a little sister. So what do you say? I promise I'll protect you. Alex squeezed my hand, which I took as a yes, and then we got up and she asked if she could show me something. It was a playground that she used to go to, and as soon as I saw it, I felt something well up inside me. It looked so familiar. We played on the jungle gym and the swings, and they even had a big slide that was so fun to play on. We played for hours, and it felt like I'd gone back in time to my childhood. Well, if only I could actually remember my childhood. As far as I know, when I was just 8 years old, I had a big accident. It gave me a major head injury and wiped my memory completely. Ever since then, I've been going to therapy and taking medication. But it's so weird not being able to remember anything from before. I try to focus on the present, though, and I know I'm lucky to even be alive. However, sometimes the migraines from the accident get really bad, and that's exactly what happened when we were on the swings. One minute, I was looking at the clouds and laughing. The next, I felt myself slipping off the swing and landing on the ground. The last thing I saw was Alex running towards me. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed, and my parents were there holding my hands. Recently, my migraines had been getting more frequent, and it really worried my mom and dad. My first thought was, where's Alex? I asked my parents if they'd seen an 8-year-old girl, but they looked confused. I realized she'd probably been scared and run off. She was constantly on my mind, though, so as soon as I got out of the hospital a few days later, I went to find her again. She was nowhere to be seen. But there was a fire in my heart that kept urging me to find her, so I couldn't give up. I had to find her. I ran to the playground and was relieved to see her on the swings. She looked so sad, so I asked her what was up, and she burst into tears and she said, "My family, they lost everything. A gang came to our house and stole everything we own." Even I started crying after hearing that. How could people be so cruel? She then told me she hadn't eaten for days, as her parents now had no money to buy her food. Luckily, I had just bought some chocolate croissants, and she gobbled them both. Meanwhile, my mind was cluttered with thoughts of helping Alex. My savings were barely enough to support her, but maybe my parents could help? They donated to a church in town, so I'm sure they'd be happy to help Alex. I quickly called my mom, and she said she'd love to meet Alex and see what they could do. So I happily told Alex the good news, and we walked straight to my house. I gave her some more food, and we sat on the couch to wait for my parents. Seeing her bright face made me feel so happy. As soon as I heard their car pull up, I ran to the door and said, "Mom, Dad, Alex is here." My parents came in and looked around the room. Then my dad said, "Sweetie, where is she?" I pointed to the sofa and said, "She was just there." Then I called her name, but she didn't reply. I didn't get it. Where was she? My mom looked worried and said, "Is she too shy? Are you sure she was with you, honey?" I frantically checked the whole house, but she was nowhere to be found. I was starting to panic now, but my dad held me and said, "Alice, sweetie, calm down. Maybe you just need a rest." Then I heard my mom whispering to him, "The severe migraines probably have drained her out again. Get her upstairs. I'll call the doctor to ask about hallucinations." "I'm not hallucinating! She's real! Why don't you believe me?" I screamed out while trying to break away from my dad's arms. I was feeling dizzy by this point. My head was pounding, and the next moment, everything went dark again. I ended up in hospital again, for the second time that week. Wow, that was a new record. I was lying there pretending to still be unconscious to eavesdrop on my parents chatting to the doctor. "Alice has been acting a little strange. She keeps mentioning a homeless girl, and it sounds quite similar to her childhood. Today, she even said she brought her home to meet us. But we can't find her anywhere. And I don't think she even exists," my mom said. The doctor then said, "It's possible that this little girl is actually Alice's lost memories. Sometimes after therapy and medication, old memories can start resurfacing. Maybe this little girl was someone from Alice's childhood, a friend or something." What? This was crazy. Was Alex from my childhood? I didn't understand. I sat bolt upright and stuttered, Are you hiding something from me?" I could tell right away they were, because my parents looked panicked, and my mom said, "Listen, sweetie, it's been a long day for you. Now isn't the right time for this story. But I'll tell you tomorrow, okay?" The next day, my parents drove me to the church that they donate to every year. I was so confused. and kept asking them who Alex was. Eventually, a nun appeared, and we all sat down in a little room on the 3rd floor. Then the secrets came pouring out. My parents weren't my real parents. After I had the accident, my parents adopted me from the church. They'd picked me up at the hospital right after I recovered and didn't tell me what happened because they didn't want to make my life any harder. They just wanted me to be happy. I couldn't believe it. Then the nun asked me to explain what had been happening recently, and I told her about Alex. As soon as I said her name, the nun looked shocked and quickly pulled out a photo album. She showed me a photo of 2 twin girls and said, "This is you, Alice, holding the teddy bear. And next to you is your twin sister. Her name is Alex." Suddenly, the room was spinning. This was all too much. I had a twin sister? Before I even had time to ask anything, the nun took my hand and led me over to a big window near the stairs. Through her words, all the past memories came rushing back to me. My biological parents had brought me and Alex to the church because they couldn't afford to raise us. No families wanted to adopt both of us, so the nun told us we would be separated. This was the most painful news we'd ever heard. So that night, we decided to escape together. I gave Alex my teddy bear to hold so that I could climb out the window first. But unfortunately, I slipped and fell from such a height that I'm lucky I even survived. That's what wiped all my memories. I stared at the window as the nun told me all of this. This was insane! How many secrets had been hidden from me all this time? So, where is Alex now? I asked, tears rolling down my cheeks. Turns out, Alex had been adopted by another family, but the nuns had lost contact with her because the family had moved overseas. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I had to see my sister. But how could I find her without any information? I started to search social media like crazy, but nothing came up. I wouldn't give up hope, though. I updated my journey finding Alex every day on a personal blog. Not one night I went to sleep without thinking about her and wondering how she was doing. Fortunately, people on the internet actually showed a lot of interest and support for my story. It got passed around, but so far, there still wasn't any hint about Alex. Even the illusion of baby Alex wouldn't show up anymore, ever since the day I heard the truth. But I knew in my bones that we would find our way back to each other again somehow. And then, one morning, I woke up from a strange dream with another migraine, so I decided to take a walk and get some fresh air and drop by the pastry shop for breakfast. I glanced over to the alley as usual, and I saw myself pacing around with a teddy bear in hand, looking kind of lost. Sounds like I'd lost the plot, right? Well, I hadn't, because it actually was Alex. We were frozen for like a whole minute when our eyes met. Then, without a single word being said, we just ran into each other's arms in tears. So, long story short, Alex had moved to France since 10, and ever since then, she'd also been trying to find me. Thanks to a post on Twitter, she realized I was still here, and so she applied for a scholarship to America so she could find me. And, well, there she was, standing right in front of me. Words can't express how unreal it still was to look at her every time. Oh, don't worry. Everyone, including my parents, have confirmed she's an actual person, not another product of my imagination. Thank God. I can't believe the crazy roller coaster ride that my life has been on for the past months. From that moment on, we were inseparable. And now, we're planning on moving in together. The only thing left for us to do is to find our biological parents. Alex remembers them clearly, so she's been filling me in on the first 8 years of our life together. Wish us luck! I kicked off my heels and threw my handbag down on the table. Geez, I'm so tired. Should I quit this job? I thought out loud. I hoped my friends were home, as I needed to vent. I was about to lie down on the couch when I suddenly saw a shadow go toward the bathroom. I took a closer look. There was a man doing something in my bathroom. Was our place getting robbed? Panicked, I grabbed one of my heels, then rushed forward and hit him with it. Thief! Thief! Hazel! Ivy! Thief! I shouted out as I continued to slam my heel into him. He held his head and kept saying, You misunderstood! I'm not... Suddenly, my two friends rushed over, but instead of helping me tackle the intruder, they pulled me off of him. Maya, stop! Hazel said hastily. He's with us. Oops. I put my heel down and gave a sheepish look. Well, thanks for the heads up. Then Hazel asked the guy if he was okay. He didn't say anything. Instead, he just glared at me before he walked out of the room. Suddenly, Hazel and Ivy were pulling me toward the kitchen table for a chat. So apparently, they decided to find a new tenant, and this Wesley guy was the chosen one. Geez, it would have been nice if they'd run it past me first. I mean, I did live here. I frowned at them, told them they sucked, and that I didn't want to live with some random guy. Maya, we didn't tell you because we knew you'd act like this. Hazel sighed. But with the rent increase, we have no choice but to bring someone new into the mix. Besides, you have to admit that Wesley is nice to look at, Ivy said in a dreamy voice. Whatever! I crossed my arms. And no, I don't think he's in the slightest bit good-looking. Hazel grinned as she said, No, because he now has heel imprints all over his head. I rolled my eyes, then grabbed my handbag and headed toward my room. I didn't want to live with some dumb guy. But thanks to my totally unreasonable friends, I didn't have much choice. The next day was Saturday. Thank God. So I slept until noon, then lazily went down to the kitchen to get some leftover pizza. Huh? Where was it? I knew Ivy and Hazel were too calorie-obsessed to touch it. It could only be Wesley. He was watching TV in the living room, so I went over to him and asked loudly, Did you eat my pizza? How dare you? Without looking away from his show, he said, Yeah, I threw it in the trash. He did what? Then he continued, You left it in the fridge to go bad and spoil all the other foods. Please don't do that again. Huh. Where was my apology? He'd thrown away my lunch, and now he dared to challenge me? How annoying! I was about to give him a piece of my mind when he handed me something and said, I made a list of house rules. I looked at the first 3 rules. Number 1, wash up all your dirty dishes straight after use, then thoroughly clean the basin. Number 2, write your initials on all your food and drinks and don't steal anyone else's. Number 3, shower time is 10 minutes maximum. Then clean the bathroom before leaving. What? Was this guy for real? Who in their right mind had the time or patience to write their initials on everything? I frustratingly replied to him, No way am I... Wesley interrupted me. 4 people are living here, so the majority vote goes. I smirked at him. I knew for sure that Hazel and Ivy would never accept those stupid rules. They liked the messy, grab-it-and-go lifestyle even more than me, and Ivy spent at least an hour in the shower. So we all gathered in the living room, and Wesley handed out his rules. But to my surprise, Ivy only flicked out her hair, then said, Okay, Wesley. And Hazel fluttered her eyelashes and said, Sure, these rules seem great. Geez, what was wrong with these girls? He wasn't even that handsome. Unfortunately, my love-struck friends' votes meant that I was outnumbered. I had no choice but to follow Wesley's ridiculous rules. The trash takeout rotation was so confusing. What was wrong with leaving it to overflow? I missed my slot, so Wesley stuck a Post-it note to my door saying, Take the trash out at 6 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and 7 p.m. on the other days. It's not difficult. W. Ugh. Who even used Post-it notes in this day and age? He was such a loser! Also, I have this box for my random items, hair slides, pins, keepsake tickets, scarves, and so on, which I kept in the living room. It didn't matter where I moved it. Wesley shook his head and mouthed the word no at me.
Yep, you guessed it. He stuck another post-it note to my door, this one saying, "No personal clutter in the communal areas. W." In the end, I stuck the box into my closet so it was out of the way. Living with Wesley was a nightmare, especially when I finally quit my job at that lame law firm, which means I had to stay home with him pretty much all the time. This guy was just too meticulous. If any of us dared place anything in the wrong place, he glared at us and said, "That isn't where it lives." Couldn't I put the TV remote on the arm of the couch if I wanted to? I pay rent too. I didn't want to live in a model home. One time, I was chilling in my room when I turned around to see Wesley standing there. He looked around my messy room, shook his head, then picked up my bra from the floor. I immediately snatched it out of his hand and hid it. How embarrassing! "Hey, why is your room so untidy?" He tutted, then grunted out before leaving. "Clean up right now." How dare he come into my room and order me about? I stomped out to the living room to confront him about it. But before I could do so, I was dumbfounded at the sight of Ivy and Hazel in the middle of a cleaning frenzy. Ivy smiled over at Wesley and said, "Isn't this shiny?" Then Hazel asked him, "Do you need me to move anything?" Jeez, it was like they had a spell cast on them or something. Then Wesley looked at me and said, "Maya, your friends have grasped the importance of keeping our living environment clean. So why can't you?" Fine. If Wesley wanted me to change, then I would. Just not in the way he expected me to. It was time I took being messy to a whole new level. I started by moving things around. Then I rubbed the initials out on his can of soda and wrote on my own. Then I settled down for an afternoon watching a movie on the couch, my feet up on the upholstery, of course. Yep, I also dropped popcorn all over the place. I couldn't help but giggle as I heard Wesley's disgruntled moans coming from the kitchen. Then I heard a cupboard slam and he appeared in front of me. "Maya, that's mine." He picked the soda can off the floor and examined the altered initials. "And this goes on a coaster on the table. Ugh, I can't stand it anymore." He swatted my legs down. "I'll be your cleaner, but I'm charging you for it." "Sure, Wesley, if that's what you want." I smiled before I threw a piece of popcorn into the air, and it missed my mouth and landed on the couch. He muttered under his breath as he picked it up and marched over to the trash can. Hey, this could be fun, especially as I had no intention of making it easy for him. I left a trail of candy wrappers around the house, dropped crumbs on the couch, and purposely didn't take my sneakers off at the door, so I got mud clumps everywhere. It was so funny watching him squirm as he cleaned up after me. Then one time, when I knew he was in an online work meeting, I barged into his room and dropped an armful of my dirty laundry on his floor, then fled. He was so mad, but couldn't move an inch since his boss was talking. Then suddenly, I got a phone call. Weird. It's from a guy at the law firm I'd worked at. Turns out, they're short-staffed and asked me to come back to work until they find someone else. But you know what? I was too sick of that job, so I politely declined the offer. But suddenly, he yelled at me with words like, "Don't be so full of yourself. You should have been grateful for this offer, because I don't think you'd be able to survive one day in the world out there. You're irresponsible, unorganized, and lazy. Have fun being jobless." Then he hung up, leaving me speechless. I felt so terrible. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. "I'm sorry about earlier, but I'm really not in the mood right now, Wes," I mumbled upon seeing Wesley walk into my room, probably to scold me about the pile of laundry. But instead, he sat down next to me, passed me a tissue, and told me that I may be the messiest girl ever, but I deserved better than that shitty job and shitty boss. "Trust yourself. I know there's more to you than this. And maybe, if you find the right job that you're passionate about, who knows? You can even become the most organized and diligent girl ever." He teased me to brighten up the atmosphere. Okay, so maybe Wesley wasn't all bad. After that, I decided to try and be a teensy bit tidier from now on, but not too tidy. Later on, he stuck a post-it note to my door saying he wouldn't be cleaning up after me tonight, as he was going out. I asked the girls where Wesley was, and they looked disappointed, as they said he went out all dressed up and mentioned something about a date.
Why did I feel a knot in my chest at the thought of Wesley on a date with some other girl? I couldn't like him, could I? Nah, how could I like someone that particular? I watched a movie to push away those strange feelings, and then went to bed. Only, I found myself unable to sleep. So at about 1 a.m., I went and got a glass of water. That's when he returned. I asked him how his date went, and he looked really awkward, muttered something out about how she was just a friend, then lingered on the spot there for me to finish, so he could wash up my glass and put it away before he went to bed. Okay, so that was weird. The weirdness continued for the next week. Wesley continued to clean up after me, but he couldn't even meet my eye, and whenever I tried talking to him, he ignored me, then hurried off. Then, one time when I was in my room, I heard footsteps by my door. I knew it was him with one of his dumb notes again. So I pushed open the door to see him standing there, red-faced, then shouted at him, "Why are you avoiding me?" He blushed and looked at the note he'd just stuck to my door. Quickly, I read it. "I'm sorry I've been avoiding you. The truth is, you're the messiest girl I've met in my whole life, but I still can't stop thinking about you. W." What? Did he like me too? I pulled him into my room to talk about this, but he looked at the mess and shook his head. "That doesn't live there." He gestured to the coat thrown on my bed. "Give it a rest." I rolled my eyes before I pulled him closer to me and kissed him. And we've been together ever since. As much as it pains me to say, it turns out that this messy girl can't live without her cleaning-obsessed guy. But then they do say that opposites attract. Who knew that bonding over Post-it notes and spoiled pizza could lead to something more?
Hey, Alex. I felt someone tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see who it was and, it was Roxy, my crush, who also happened to be the most beautiful girl in the world. I figured I must have been in her way, so I quickly mumbled out, "Sorry," and stepped aside. But out of my surprise, she smiled at me and said, "So, a little birdie told me you like me? You know, I think it's cute you haven't made a move on me yet, not like most of the guys around here." I stared at her open-mouthed. Was I dreaming? I pinched myself to check. Nope, this was real. So I nodded my head and muttered out, yeah? "My friend's having a party at their frat house on Wednesday. You want to come?" Before I could reply, her friend Luke appeared, and grinning, he said, "Yeah, you just gotta come to this party." Roxy hit his arm while giving him a dirty look, then smiled at me. "So it's at number 19, starts at 9 p.m. I'll see you then?" I nodded in response, and she said, "Great, see you there." Then she winked at me before she walked off. So yeah, I'm Alex, your average second-year college student. And this is the story about how my crush tried to lure me into a seriously sinister trap. I guess I'm a normal guy. I'm not as rich and popular as the kids from the frat houses are. Instead, my room is in the regular dorms, and although I'm not ugly or unpopular or anything, I'm easily overlooked. So I kept my crush on Roxy a secret because she was way out of my league. She was so beautiful, this was crazy. How did she even find out that I liked her? I couldn't believe that she'd asked me out. This was mad. At first, I felt like the luckiest guy ever. But then as I watched Roxy walk back to her friends, I noticed them giggling, except for this one girl called Sophie. Meanwhile, Luke was making everyone high-five him. He was always a little odd, and he spoke to people in strange ways. Then I caught Sophie's eye, and she gave me a look that said, "Don't." Then she promptly looked away. Her jerky boyfriend Jack had his arm around her shoulder and was tugging on one of her trademark pigtails as he glugged back his drink. I had no idea what she saw in him. But what had her look been about? Back in my dorm, I discussed it with my roommate Ben, and he said it sounded like a setup. As much as I wanted it to be legit, my gut instinct was also saying that it was too good to be true. So the night of the party, I decided to take a look out my dorm window, as it's in the perfect location to get a clear view of the frat houses. I counted the houses down to number 19, then I took out my binoculars, for which I used for field research studies, to take a closer look. The house had a large rainbow pride flag hanging from the two windows. This made me wonder why Roxy would want to go to a gay party. I saw a lot of feminine-dressed men, and the only two girls that I could spot were far from attractive. and it seemed like they were a couple. And then there was Luke in the front yard holding 2 drinks and looking around like he was waiting for someone. Where was Roxy? I decided to check her social media to see if she'd posted anything. And I noticed she'd left her location open. She was in a nightclub, Diego's. That was strange. So I gave the party a miss, and instead Ben and I went to a student bar. I told him about it, and he said it sounded like I dodged a bullet. The next day I was sitting with Ben and some of my other friends in the canteen when Roxy stormed over to me and yelled out, "How dare you stand me up? Who do you think you are?" Luke appeared and said, "Yeah, why not show?" I just shrugged and said, "Roxy, I know you weren't there. Your phone location's public. You were at Diego's." She hesitated, then said, Yeah, my friend borrowed my phone. But what you did was so creepy, you stalker." As if. Roxy was never without her phone, so I wasn't buying her story. This whole thing didn't make any sense, so I sort of mouthed out, "Whatever, Roxy," then carried on eating my lunch. After that, she started making my life a living hell. She told everyone that I was stalking her, so random students started coming up to me and telling me to leave her alone. Then someone covered the dorm corridors in leaflets with a picture of my face and the word "stalker" written across them. I knew Roxy was behind it. It was so weird. But Luke was worse. One time after class, he sneaked up on me, grabbed my arm, and said, "Hey Alex, why you bail on my party?" I told him that I saw the party from a distance and it wasn't my thing, so he replied, "Hey, you got a probs with me being gay?" I shook my head and told him I didn't, but he still wouldn't let go of my arm. I was relieved when he finally let go of me, and I hurried back to my dorm. On the way, I spotted Sophie sitting outside on the shared bathroom. Hang on, why was she in the flood of tears? I asked her if she was okay, but she told me to go away. Although I didn't want to put my nose where it shouldn't be. But I wasn't heartless, so I left her my bottle of water before I walked off. I said, "If you want to talk about it, I'm here for you." I was unlocking my dorm room when I heard someone cough behind me. I turned around to see Sophie standing there. She thanked me for the water and she said she wanted to talk. I led her into my room and she sat on my bed. And staring at her feet, she said in tears, "I caught Jack and Roxy by the locker rooms, but when I confronted them about it, they just shooed me away." I sat down next to Sophie and hugged her. This was horrible. It looks like I've been so wrong about Roxy. She wasn't my dream girl at all. Instead, she was a nightmare. Sophie continued, "It gets worse. Roxy stole my assignment and submitted it as her own. It's due tomorrow and I don't have the time to write a new one." She started crying again. I passed her a tissue and said, "We'll sort this out. There's no way she's getting away with it. That's horrible." So I told her to send an email to the college dean and to her course tutor explaining what happened. She'd attached the original assignment and all the notes she'd written about it. They both got back to us within minutes and said that they would look into this. Sophie looked so delighted, but then suddenly her smile dropped, and she fiddled with one of her pigtails as she said, "Alex, there's something I need to tell you. Please don't hate me." Then she told me how the party Roxy had invited me to had been a trap. Roxy found out I had a crush on her, and she was embarrassed that an average guy like me dared to have feelings toward her. And she was adamant she needed to teach me a lesson. So that's when Luke said he would help, as he wanted to add me to his collection, so they hatched a plan. Roxy invited me to the party, and Luke was waiting for me with a spiked drink. Apparently, this was Roxy's way of silencing me, and making sure I didn't look at her in the same way ever again. Whoa, this was so dark. I shivered at the thought of what could have been. It was terrifying. Sophie also told me that she begged Roxy not to do this, but she got her friends to hold her down. Then she told her that if she intervened, they'd make her suffer. I comforted Sophie and told her that it wasn't her fault. I knew I couldn't just stay quiet on this, as they could do this to some poor other guy who dared to have a crush on her. So with Sophie's help, we wrote a letter to the dean and to the college security about what had happened. This wasn't going to be taken lying down. Sophie was terrified that Roxy and her friends would come after her, so I invited her back to my hometown for the weekend to get away from everyone and let things cool down. When we arrived back at college, news spread that Roxy had been expelled for stealing another student's work. As for Luke, the cops raided his frat house and found loads of banned substances hidden in there. It was so serious that it went to court, and they ended up in jail. As for Jack, he tried to guilt-trip Sophie as to why she should get Roxy expelled for dumb reasons, but she stopped talking to him anyway. I often think back to the night of the party and what could have been. My life would have been ruined, and what for? All because I dared to have a crush on a beautiful girl. I say good riddance. Some good has come out of this whole mess. Sophie and I grew closer and started dating. Now we've both graduated, and that's not all. We have 2 amazing kids together. I love my beautiful family with all my heart, and I just want to protect them from all the bad in this world. So in short, I don't think that just because you're beautiful, rich, and popular, that you get away with doing whatever you please. Regardless of age, sex, looks, and so on, everyone deserves to be treated with respect and compassion.